to get started. Thank you for being here this morning. Today's presentation is going to be college planning for special needs families. And today we have Allison Schaberg. She's with Consolidated Planning Group. So this meeting will be recorded. So if you would like that, we will be able to get that to you in the future. But my name is Barbara Grogan. This is the Parent Resource Center, and we're very happy to be hosting Allison this morning. So we'll get started. We want to get started on time. So I'll hand it over to Allison.
Thanks, Barbara. Thank you for having us here today. So right now you guys are muted, and if you have questions as we're going through this presentation, please just put your questions in the chat box, and Barbara will monitor the chat box, and she'll let me know whenever we have questions. Again, today's meeting is going to be recorded, and so we'll send out a recording of this. In fact, we typically don't send out our slides, but we actually will be sending out our slides this time because there's going to be a lot of links and helpful information that you can use following this presentation. So again, Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We really custom design plans based off of your needs, wants, and goals, based off of that individual loved one that you have that may need care for the rest of their life. We really pride ourselves on putting out a lot of educational events as it relates to special needs planning. There's so much information that we need to know, and it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose for sure, Barbara. Myself, I have 4 kids. I have 2 with special needs. I have one that has transitioned and into adulthood, and I have one that's still a minor. And so basically, I've done this all of my life. This is what I do for a living. But I live it as a parent too, and what I would say is it was hard. This is a hard path, and navigating some of these things is pretty difficult. And when you're coming around the bend and transition time, there's a lot of things to be thinking about. So we've really put a lot of information into this today to share with you some things that we've learned along the way and give you some good tips as it relates to college planning for your loved one. So really, starting out, we really want to really spend time thinking about strengths and weaknesses and letting go of some of the expectations is what I say. We are always putting ourselves in a box. We're always comparing ourselves to others, our kids to others, those types of things. And so really looking at your child specifically and looking at their strengths and weaknesses and really, thinking about what is the best path? What is the best next path? And I know a lot of families are thinking about, are we staying in the public school from 18 to 21? When are we leaving the public school? When we leave the school, are we going into a transition program, or are we hoping to go directly into some type of college program? So thinking about a traditional path versus a non-traditional path, any of the following are okay. And so what we say is really just set your child up for success, because maybe that early success, and maybe it's a transition program, maybe it's a certificate program, it's not a 4-year university, maybe it's the community college. Any of those things are okay, but what we want to do is take the first step and helping them achieve success, because we can build on that success later. But when we put them in the deep end, because society says it looks better if they go to a 4-year university or wherever it looks better in your mind, but they have a low probability of success right now because maybe they're not there yet from a maturity perspective, whatever the reasons are. Starting out slow, this could look like, starting out slow might look like going to the community college and taking 1 class. It doesn't mean that you have to take, the 12 credit hours. If 12 credit hours is a recipe for disaster, then take 3 or take 6. So think about some of those things. And we really just, want to say there's really no comparisons. They're not behind. They are where they are. And really, really think about that, and just don't put them in a box. Like I said, the box starts early. It starts early. When somebody graduates from college, they say, when are you going to get married? And when they're at your wedding and they're asking when you're going to have kids, and they're at the hospital, you just had a baby, they want to know when you're going to have another one. It never ends. It starts early and it never ends. And so we just want to keep that in mind. Okay, so here are 6 factors that students with learning disabilities need to succeed. So as you're thinking about your child and kind of where we're going from here, thinking about these factors: self-awareness, proactivity, perseverance, goal setting, and support systems, emotional coping strategies, and where your child fits in these categories. And this is something to have on your list to be working on these things. I would add advocacy of your child. And so, and when I say that, self advocacy, what do I have? How does it affect me? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And like, this may sound silly, but like one of the things that we did when my daughter was in high school, when we were going to clinic appointments or things like that, um, I would, say, okay, well, pretend I'm the doctor. I've just walked in the room and I say hello to you. Um, and you're seeing them for the first time. What are you going to tell them? What do you have? Who are you? What do you have? Why are you here? What questions do you have? Those types of things. And so we kind of practice this in the car. It sounds silly, but it's helpful because we're not always going to be with our students every day holding their hands. And they need to be able to speak up. And these are things, these are expectations that the schools have. The offices of disability don't like to talk to moms. They like to talk to your student. And sometimes we've got issues and nonverbal and things like that. I understand that. But this practice talking and practice advocating really, really helps. And sometimes it's just, like I said, just jawing it, just saying it out loud, okay, and letting your students say whatever it is that they're going to say, and then saying, and then I'll add to it. Don't worry, I won't leave you hanging. You do the very best you can, and then I'll add to it, or whatever we need to do. So think about some of those things. Okay, so this is a big one that we definitely need to spend some time on: accommodations and offices of disability on the college level. So the first things first, you've got to know, even if you have an IEP, 504, you already have accommodations in the public school, they don't, it's not necessarily, they don't transfer to the college level. So it's true that you can share those accommodations at the college level of what you may have had in the public school, and it may give that counselor a good idea of what some of the supports that your loved one had in place and what they may need, but they're not bound by that document. So really, when it comes to getting accommodations on the college level, we want you to start early. We see that some families wait and they're 3, 4, 5 weeks into a semester without accommodations that their child desperately needed, and so they're already setting themselves up for failure. They're, or for challenges. So typically, when it comes to accommodations at the college level, there's an application process. It's usually online. They're going to want to see typically testing within the last 3 to 5 years. This is, academic neuropsych testing, learning disability testing, those types of things. It's going to document your child's disability and what accommodations are needed. So what I will tell you is that every single college is different on how they process this and what they require. It could be 2 years. It could be 3 to 5. Some of the schools have relaxed on this a little bit due to the pandemic. We've also seen people that had testing that was older than 3 to 5 years, but it was accompanied by a letter from the psychologist or the psychiatrist that has been following your child for many, many years, basically saying this is a permanent disability. These are permanent deficits. We've tracked this on a regular basis. No additional testing is needed. Here's the accommodations. I've followed this child for this many years. So we've actually seen offices of disability take that kind of letter, which it's worth a shot. So if you have testing that's older than 3 to 5 years, before I go spend $3,500 on new testing, I might try to get a letter from that physician to accompany your old testing to see if that will be accepted. It often is. So we really say we want you to do your homework on the offices of disability. So when my daughter was going to college, we had a list of colleges that we were interested in because of the degree path that they had. But there's a lot of research that goes into it, but at the top of our list was researching the offices of disability. They're not created equally. Some of them are very big, some of them are very small, some of them have a lot of resources and tools and things available to your child to help them, like thinking out loud, Kurzweil, Dragon Speak, so voice to text recognition software, audio books. I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there, but some offices have these tools and resources, and some offices are lacking in these tools and resources. So we really spent a lot of time knowing who the people in the Office of Disability were, what they offered, if in determining whether or not they could really support my child. And so we were able to eliminate some programs right off the bat just because they really weren't up to par. So choose wisely. And this is where I kind of smile and say, you need a spreadsheet, parents. If you're applying to multiple schools, having a spreadsheet together of kind of learning who you talk to, who the people in place are, and those types of things really matter. So we want you to check the requirements early and be prepared. So again, some of these things, the processing time that the Office of Disability has, the sooner you get things in, the sooner they're going to get your accommodations approved, and you can start the semester with everything in place and everything lined up for success. When it comes to work, reasonable accommodation is required if it does not pose undue hardship, and there's some links here, but I know that we're mainly focused on school today. So one of the things on a previous slide, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a little bit, but vocational rehab, and that may have been something that you guys have talked about before with your school system or what have you, but through the Texas Workforce Commission, vocational rehab, there are programs for kids with disabilities from 14 to 22. And the whole idea of the program is to get your student with a disability work ready for competitive employment. Okay, so I'm mentioning this now because they do a lot of assessments, and so this is not where you call them up and you say, I need this assessment and I want you to pay for this, but you're going to be assigned a counselor. They're going to work individually with you and your child to help determine what is needed for your child to be successful in a work setting. And so some of the things that they may recommend is a vocational evaluation. Sometimes they might recommend a neuropsych evaluation, and they'll pay for that. So if it's part of the plan through vocational rehab, they will pay for these assessments that otherwise would be out of pocket and pretty expensive for you. So when it comes to post-high school options for special needs, we want to also think about day and transition programs. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not always the best fit, like that we're going to move straight from the public high school straight into a university program. What we do see is a lot of kids with disabilities will stay in the public high school past the age 18, sometimes 21, wherever they may be. And then sometimes they'll go into a transition program. And there's some transition programs out here kind of listed on here. And when it comes to these, again, we want you to research these early, look at them, check them out, tour them. Put your name on the waiting list. Some of these places have long waiting lists, and some of the waiting lists have gotten longer with COVID. Granted, they've lost some students because maybe parents didn't want kids with a compromised immune system at some of these places, but they had to limit some of their capacity. So if you're thinking about a transition program prior to the next step, a certificate program or college, what have you, start early on that as well. So these are some kind of just really a list of some of the programs that we know that are out there, that are good, that are worth checking into. And I know Barbara was just talking about Eastern New Mexico University, and it's not on our list, but that was something that she was talking about. Most of these programs are in the state of Texas, for the exception of Lynn University. That's going to be in Florida. And there is a wide variety of full university, a 4-year degree program. Some are a community college degree path. Other are certificates. Some of them are, 9 months. It could be a few months. It could be 9 months. It could be a year. Various certificate programs, or programs that are simply designed to get your child ready to work. It could be to work in food service. It could be to work in kind of childcare. There's different settings and different career paths, that there's some particular programs. Now, some of them on here, so like, where we say the PATH program, the Aggie Achieve, we look at VAST Academy, STEPS. I mean, there's just a ton of them out there. But some of the colleges that are on here not because they have a specific program, like some of the programs that I just mentioned, but they do have an awesome Office of Disability. So if you have a child that may have a disability and maybe they're not in the IDD, not categorized as IDD, but they have other disabilities, then they may be a good fit for some of these university programs that have really, really good offices of disability. So CLE, this is something you may have heard of, is the college living experience. CLE is in Austin, and they partner up with the community college in Austin. And basically, this is an opportunity for your child to live there. They do academics and career development alongside. So basically, your child goes to the community college, but they're promoting independent living skills and social development while your loved one is also going to the community college. And so as far as CLE, this is their contact for them. CLE, you would have to reach out to them to see if there's any scholarships or anything as it relates to their program. This is a very good program, but this program is definitely not free. It's a pretty expensive program, plus you're going to be paying for the community college. But it's a great program. So for families that are your loved one is wanting to have some independence, but in your heart of hearts they're not ready for that, and but they are ready to push you away a little bit, this gives you an option of a place that they can have some of that involvement, adult involvement, and help without the parent breathing down their neck, or so they think. We do anyway, So that's one of them. So here's another one, Bloom Consulting Campus Connections. So one thing I want to say about Bloom Consulting, they have a ton of programs, and so you should visit their website. So I'm basically only talking about the Campus Connection program with Bloom Consulting right now. But it's basically a wraparound program and support for students with various disabilities as they attend post-secondary institution. And it's basically of their choice. They have virtual support. And this is considered pretty affordable at $1,000 a month private pay, or they say contact your VR counselor to discuss sponsorship. Bloom Consulting is a firm that VR often contracts with. So it's possible that you could have the services that you're desiring through Bloom Consulting, and it's possible that it could be sponsored by VR. And I don't work for VR, and I don't get to make the decisions on what they pay for and what they don't. But again, when you're working with VR, it's very tailored to the individual and what their needs are. So I always just give that disclaimer. So on this particular program, so $1,000 a month, $9,000 a year, they have a direct partnership at Sam Houston State University. I think they have another one in, I want to say Nevada. Don't get me lying about that, but I know for sure that they have a direct program, and they're working very, very closely with Sam Houston State University. So this is, again, worth your while to go check out their website and look at the very the vast programs that they have. But they are all about doing the assessments that need to happen out there for your child to be successful in whatever next steps of transition are occurring. And the same thing that I'm saying for everyone, listen, if you're late in starting on your transition planning, it's okay, and I'm glad you're here. But if you're early and you're starting to think about this stuff now and you want to stay ahead of this, the sooner you get started on these types of things, the better. The sooner you educate yourself on these things and kind of have a plan and you know which way you want to move forward, it is definitely helpful. Okay, so we spend a lot of time, and this is where, this is a matter that comes up over and over and over again. What about funding? How are we paying for this? How are we going to pay for school, university, what have you? What about the FAFSA? We always hear about the FAFSA. And so this is the free application for federal student aid. It's available each year on October 1st for the following school year. So when do you complete it? So basically, if you've got a child that's a senior, well, the year before you're leaving school. So if you're starting school, it's August, and they are a senior and you're planning on them graduating that year, that October is when the FAFSA is going to open up for you. And first come, first serve. The sooner you do the FAFSA, the better. Always complete this. You're gonna open up an account for yourself as the parent, and then your student is going to have an account as well. This is something that you as a parent, you need to do. So a lot of families, they don't know, it's been a long time, they didn't go to school themselves, or they didn't complete the FAFSA, and they don't really understand this, and they think that this is the responsibility of the guidance counselor at the school. Well, the guidance counselor at the school, they're good and they're helpful with college and all of these things. They got a lot of students. They're not completing FAFSAs for people, and they can't anyway, even if they had capacity. There is so much private personal information that comes from your tax return when it comes to FAFSA that the parent truly needs to be involved. The parent needs to do it. The student needs to be involved with the parent in going through the process. But this is not a process for your student to do themselves. And so I want to share that in case you've not gone down this highway before, because it can be confusing. And I promise you, if your student takes it upon themselves to do the FAFSA, they're probably going to mess it up. Okay. And because it's confusing, and we're happy to help if you guys have got questions on this. So we hear a lot of people say, I'm not going to apply for that. I'm not doing the FAFSA. I make too much money. We're not going to get anything anyway. Why should I even waste my time when it comes to the FAFSA? And it's a valid point, but here's the deal. You need to do it anyway, because basically every scholarship out there, if you don't do the FAFSA, you're automatically disqualified for the scholarship. So most scholarships require that you do the FAFSA. They don't care how much money you make. It's just part of the requirement. So you're already dead in the water if you don't do the FAFSA. So another thing when it comes to funding, we want you to be smart. Think about scholarships. I mean, we all love the word scholarships and love the idea of people helping us pay for college. But so I'm talking about scholarships: community-based, school-based, disability disease-based, which there's a ton, sport, music, band-based. There's even siblings-based. It's like siblings that have a disability, siblings of family members that have a disability. I mean, there's a scholarship for everything. So this is another thing where I say, hey, create a spreadsheet. And know your deadlines, okay? And this is the thing that I found really, really maddening when we were going through this process with my daughter, is everything is different. Everything. Applications, the deadlines, every school, even though you might have, a list of 15 state schools, they're all in the state of Texas, you would think that they would all be uniform. Things are different. So some of them have the common app, and you can just apply through their other schools want you to apply to them directly. And as far as the scholarships are concerned, and here's what I need you to know. So we talked about that senior in high school. It's August, they're starting school, September, whatever. A lot of the deadlines for these scholarships are December 1st of their senior year. Okay. So you're just thinking like, oh, it's the senior year and we're going to start looking at all of this stuff. And then you decide you're going to start looking at it after Christmas. You're not alone if other people think this. But by the time you start looking at it, you've already missed the deadline for a lot of the scholarships. So I'm not saying that all of them, but I'm just saying that a lot of them open up October, November, and they're closed by December. There are a few in the spring that are kind of a later application. So your spreadsheet of knowing which ones you're going to apply for and when they open up, and getting those applications in, getting things in early. I just really, really recommend this. Now, one thing that I will tell you that we did with our daughter was the summer before senior year. Part of her requirement of what we required of her of the summer was getting her essays done. So a lot of these college applications require essays, and they're painful. And so what can happen is if you don't have your essays done, then you're behind. You're behind on applying. You're behind on applying for the scholarships because they want the essays. There's 3 essays. Historically, there's 3 essays, and you can Google and get what the topics are now. and get them writing on that. And we hired somebody to review the essays, critique them, and help us as it relates to that. So what happened was, is when we started school in the fall, she already had those essays, so she could focus on being a student, being a senior, doing what she needed to do, and not having that 1,000-pound gorilla hanging over her. Now, it was painful. There were tears. There were multiple renditions of the essays. It wasn't fun, and she definitely didn't like doing it over the summer. But at the end of the day, it really worked out great for us, and she got a ton of scholarships. So another thing that I want to talk to you about on the scholarships, I want you to choose wisely. So again, this is a thing. This is you and your child, and unfortunately, I just have to tell you, it's mostly you. It's mostly you as a parent when it comes to these scholarship applications. A lot of these applications are no match for 18-year-old kids, right? And so they need help. So this is where it's not where you say, you're supposed to be doing these applications. This is going to be time that you're going to have to carve out to do with them. And the other thing that I wanted to say when I said choose wisely, so there's a lot of scholarships out there, but some of them aren't very much. So I was kind of strategic when I was looking at what scholarships we wanted to apply for and what we wanted to do, and I was choosing bigger ones. Probably the lowest one that I applied for was $2,500, all the way on up to fully funded, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 scholarships. That's what's going to make a difference in the funding of your child's school. So if we're looking on a cheap basis that everything room and board is 25 grand a year, 25 grand a year on a cheap basis, it goes up from there. If they're living on campus at a university, we want some big scholarships. So there's a lot of them out there that are $250, $500, and the interesting thing is, some of these applications for a $250 scholarship are as long and as ridiculous as the scholarship application for a $20,000 scholarship. So anyway, I just had to draw a line in the sand and say what I couldn't do, and focus on the ones that were really going to make a difference financially for us. So 529 college savings plans, of course, this is designed for paying for college. This is something, so a lot of our families that we serve, they have kids with disabilities. They started with a 529 plan early. They were planning for college. They weren't sure if their kid was going to go to college or not. In fact, nobody is. When you open a 529 account, if you have more than one kid, if you have one kid, we don't know what's going to happen in 18 years, okay? But basically on a 529, you are the owner, and the beneficiary is who's getting money as far as going to college. So the 529 pays the college directly, and you can change beneficiaries. So if you have another student that got a scholarship, they didn't need their 529 money, you can change beneficiaries on that. If your child is getting SSI and Medicaid, the 529 money is not going to be considered theirs. But you want to double check on that as far as the distributions to the college, and it cannot be distributed directly to them, or it will be counted as income. Now, we also have families that say, I have a 529 for college and I'd like to convert it to a 529A, ABLE. And so an ABLE account is like a 529C, but it's for achieving a better life for an individual with disabilities. We have full educational events on ABLE accounts and how they all work. But basically an ABLE account, you can put $15,000 a year into an ABLE account. And basically the things that you can pay for out of the ABLE account is, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with disability, you can pay for things out of that. And that includes school. It includes college. It includes transition programs. It includes medicine. It includes tutoring. So whereas like a college savings plan doesn't include tutoring. So there are a lot more things that you can pay for out of an ABLE account and not get penalized. So if we have money in a 529C, we're not sure our child's going to a university, but we do know that they have needs, you may want to think about converting some of that to an ABLE account. And again, vocational rehab may provide support, and I use that word may, if it's in line with the goals established within within the plan for the individual to find competitive employment. So there may be certificate programs, there may be some different programs that your loved one may qualify for or get some help financially. So again, it's definitely worth connecting. And I'm just a fan of using the resources that are out there. So yes, I have, health insurance, and yes, we can do this, or we can buy this, or we can what have you. But there's a ton of resources out there that are available to lighten the load financially on you. So we definitely want you to use those. Okay, so what about scholarships? And so for the next few pages, we're not going to go line by all of these links, but these are the things that we are going to email out to everybody so that you have these and you can research these yourself. So we've put together a big list of scholarships and different programs. That it's not exhaustive, it's not everything that's out there, but there's a lot of them. And so this is a good start for you to start looking at these and thinking about which ones you might want to apply for. One thing that I want to bring up that a lot of families don't know, some of them do, a lot of families don't. If you have an adopted child, if you have a child that went through the foster system in the state of Texas, you've adopted them through the state of Texas, there is a waiver program. There's a college tuition waiver program, but basically these kids can go to college for free. So you need to know about it. Nobody knocks on your door to tell you about it. And if you have friends or family of other people that might fall into that category, this is a good link for that, and share that with them because, again, they can go to school for free. One place that I found effective for asking for a list of scholarships is the child life specialist at your specialty clinic. You might see neurology, cardiology, oncology, who knows who you're seeing. But Texas Children's, Baylor College of Medicine has a really good transition program. So think outside the box, ask that child life specialist. They usually rise to the challenge. They may already have a list. They may know where to get a list, and they might be able to help you there. One of the things that I really spend a lot of time sharing is the Terry Foundation Scholarship. This is a big deal, and you're going to want to check this out. So the sooner you can get your kids volunteering, the better, okay? So the Terry Foundation Scholarship is based in Houston. It's the largest private scholarship provider in the state of Texas. And basically, they fund, I don't even know how many hundreds of students each year. There's probably probably 150 or 200 new scholars every year at 13 Texas public universities. So basically all the ones that you can think of, A&M, UT, SAM, Stephen F. Austin, Texas Tech. I don't know, I could go on and on, but there's 13 universities. They award scholarships, and these scholarships are fully funded for 4 years. So that means 100%. They pay for everything. And so what these scholarships are based off of, they're based off of grades, they're based off of need, but they're largely based off of volunteerism. So so this is where, and this was our strategy. So we started early, we researched everything. We had working memory issues, processing speed delays. We had issues. We had disabilities. But how can we get scholarships? What if we're not going to be in the top 10%? What if we don't even play sports? We're pretty much not getting a sports scholarship if we don't even play sports. So how can we round it through? How can we figure this out? So our answer was the Terry Foundation Scholarship. And we really got our daughter volunteering in meaningful things. So I don't want to rain on like volunteering at church, but volunteering at church is not what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm talking about, outside organizations. We volunteered for with Hope for Three. We volunteered with youth and philanthropy. There's Dream League. There's so many things that we can get our kids involved in on a regular basis where they're actually getting some solid hours. By the time my daughter graduated from high school, she had 900 volunteer service hours. And so that was our strategy. Our strategy was to do good enough on school, not great, okay? We weren't straight A's, do good enough. We had average test scores, and we had extraordinary volunteer service work, and she got the Terry Foundation Scholarship. It's worth looking at. It's worth checking on. She spent a lot of time volunteering. She did a very, very good job. But what happened is these organizations, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Hope for Three, Youth and Philanthropy, number one, they also, had scholarships out there as well. But these directors of these places that she was volunteering for wrote glowing recommendation letters. And a recommendation letter from somebody like that, a pillar in the community, as opposed to your physician, as opposed to your pastor, a true recommendation letter of somebody who really knows you. They've appreciated your service. They've seen you shine. They've known what you've been up against. That was the ticket. So that's what you're looking for in some of these things. So I just really like to share that foundation, because again, you get a scholarship, something like that. That's $100,000 plus pay raise or a boost to your retirement if you don't have to pay for college for your child. Okay, so these are, again, I'm going to run through these slides quickly. These are just links for lots of different scholarships out there. Basically, whatever the diagnosis is that your child has, there's a scholarship out there for it. And so research the disease-based scholarship, research the different ones that are out there. And like I said, create your spreadsheet, know your deadlines. If you have staff or you have a young intern type person that can help you do this, kind of put these lists together, work with somebody to help you with this. It's definitely worth it. So there's just so many. Again, whatever that disease-based disability is that you have, it's just on and on and on, and you just want to just pick and choose wisely. So what we are going to do, again, is we don't typically send out our slides, but we are going to send a PDF out today that's going to have all these links, so you'll have those at your fingertips. You don't have to, copy anything down quickly or anything like that. When it comes to special needs planning, we really talk about a lot of topics. Today we've talked about a lot of things, but when it comes to special needs planning and transition planning, basically all of these things should be on your radar. And we have a YouTube channel out there. We'll send out a link for the YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our page, and you can hear other webinars like this, and basically on every single topic that's out there. When it comes to planning, and when it comes to sending our kids to college, it comes to them turning 18, we need to be thinking about guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision making. And we have some really good webinars on that topic. Not everybody needs guardianship, but it's real smart, even if your child doesn't have a disability. If you're sending your child to college, to think about a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney, it's really important. They don't have to talk to you if you don't have that. When it comes to guardianship, you can consider guardianship 6 months in advance prior to turning 18. A lot of kids don't need guardianship. There are partial guardianships. There's a lot of different options out there, so you want to look at those types of things. What we do is we really come up with a future care cost estimate. So this is important when it comes to planning as well. If you have a child that may need some form of care for the rest of their life, then we need to plan that accordingly. Most families are going to spend 20 to 35 years in retirement, and most families need the assets they've saved over 20 to 35 years to fund their retirement. So that leaves little left to fund future care if we have a child that's going to need care past our death. So we really spend some time looking at that and putting numbers to paper on that. Texas waivers and interest lists, make sure your children are on the list. Make sure they're on the right list. HCS, Texas Home Living, we've got CLASS. CLASS is a separate phone number to call and get yourself on the list. So we often hear that people say their kids are on the list and they're on one list but not the other. So you want to double check that, and you're going to want to follow up with that every I think it's 2 years. Usually, sometimes they call you to follow up, but you want to check with your LIDA on that, with your local intellectual disability authority on that. Like for Houston, it's the Harris Center. For Fort Bend, it's Texana. And so you probably already have that down. So we talk a lot about SSI, SSDI, understanding the difference and knowing when to apply. A lot of your kids have maybe not qualified for SSI and Medicaid prior to turning 18, and everything changes when they turn 18 because it's based off of their assets, not yours anymore once they turn 18. So even though they still live in your house, even though even though you may still claim them on your tax return, you're going to want to apply for SSI and Medicaid when they turn 18. You're going to want to make sure that they don't have more than $2,000 in their name before you apply. Um, and if they're already getting SSI and Medicaid, you do need to schedule an appointment for that 18th birthday month, because there is kind of a re-up process that you go through for that. So we hit on ABLE accounts a little bit. Beneficiary designations, this is something that is important. If your child is getting SSI and Medicaid, or they will get SSI and Medicaid, it is important not to make your child lose SSI and Medicaid, and you can accidentally make them lose it by simply leaving money to them directly in their name. So a way around this is through special needs trusts. You can have money in an ABLE account, you can have money in a special needs trust, you can leave a beneficiary designation specifically to the named child special needs trust. So it might look like the third-party special needs trust for the benefit of John Smith is basically, instead of saying, I'm going to leave this to John Smith. So that's a big thing that we see that are issues along the way. Child support being directed to a first-party special needs trust. This is another reason why you'll lose SSI and Medicaid. We see a lot of families that have gone through a divorce and their child support is going to continue past age 18. And if that is the case for you and your child support is not directed to a first-party special needs trust, it needs to be, and it needs to be before you apply for SSI and Medicaid. So we can talk more about that offline. And so the post-high school options, education options, we've really been talking about that. And the other thing that we want to just hit on again is the waiting list for the community-based care facilities. Some of those waiting lists can be 5 years. I'm telling you, look at this, research it, put your name on the list. It doesn't hurt to put your name on the list. And you may come up and you may not want your slot, and that's fine. Who cares? But at least you have options, because what happens is we see some families that they get behind, and then the next thing you know, they think they have plenty of time, and those high school years go away quickly. And then what happens is the kid comes home and sits and they play video games and they sit in front of the computer. They don't have a program to go to, once public high school is over. So really getting going on that, getting yourself on any of the waiting lists, and really doing your education, getting your education on all the stuff that's out there and what might be a good fit is super, super important. So Barbara, that's basically all I've got for today. I'd love to open it up for any questions that we have for anybody that's on the line. Again, we'll get the recording out, we'll get the slides out. And if you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, we'll have a link. We'll have a link for that as well. Then you'll have access. I think there's about 35 webinars out there on that YouTube channel, and basically every topic that we just talked about, there are recordings out there for that. So I would like to turn it back over to Barbara and open it up for any questions.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been so informative. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I actually have a question about the FAFSA. Does the FAFSA also apply for students who may be going on to graduate school?
I actually, that is a good question, and I actually think that it does, and I'm not positive about that. Basically, what I will tell you is that there are a lot of scholarships for graduate school. And so again, going back to the scholarships, a lot of them require the FAFSA. So I actually do believe that it does apply. If you're in school, it applies. And you have to repeat that process every year.
Yeah.
So once you start it, so every October, it's on my calendar to do that FAFSA because I still have a child in college.
Okay, and then getting back to the Terry Foundation, I think that's a fabulous, fabulous point to bring up that, some of our kids, they're not going to be in top 10%. And that's okay. But those volunteer hours and those recommendation letters that are associated with those efforts that student made all those years, look what it did for your daughter. So I think that was so good in highlighting that particular one. And you said she had like 900 hours. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was a ton of hours. Like it was just, and she did it over over a 4-year period.
4 year period.
And so, it's Saturdays here. It was, I mean, it's just different things that she was doing, but what we did was consistent. And I have to tell you, it was just it, when it came down to it, it's just, again, like I talked about setting realistic expectations in the beginning. I was real with myself of what wasn't going to happen when she was starting her freshman year. And so what are we going to do about it? And
Mhm.
so that's what we did about it. And so what ended up happening is she got about 10 scholarships is what she got. And we gave most of them back because when she got the Terry Foundation scholarship, she was fully funded and she didn't need anything. And so it was obviously an absolute blessing. I mean, it was an unexpected blessing. You never know how it's going to work out. But her hard work really paid off. And it wasn't, she works really hard and she's had a lot of struggles and she truly has a permanent disability, but she rose above the challenges. And so there's a lot of scholarships out there for kids that rise above the challenges and they succeed in spite of the
Right.
things that they've gone through. And so it was just totally worth it. And that was, I mean, like there's a $20,000 scholarship through 4-H. That's another one, but
Mhm.
it's a lot more competitive. I would say it's a lot more academic based, but there's a whole bunch of and I don't even think I had these on the list, but there is a whole bunch of great scholarships through Rodeo Houston.
Mhm.
So you need to look those up as well. There's some really big ones, $20,000 ones out there as well. So anyway, it makes all the difference in the world. Did it take a lot of time? Did we think this out? Did we plan this? We didn't do this by the seat of our flying by the seat of our pants. We had a plan. We worked our plan. We knew what our deficits were. We were real with that, and we kind of rose above it anyway. And that's what all of you can do as well. There's just so much support out there, and a lot of these schools, I mean, they want your child to be successful as they want it as much as you want it. There's just a lot of options out there, and it's definitely worth your time. I spent a lot of Saturdays, like I said, that summer there was a lot of tears, when it came to these essays and stuff, and the struggle was real, and there was a lot of Saturdays or Sunday afternoons that I dedicated to this, or evenings. But not having to throw down 100, 125, or $150,000 over a 4-year period, I would say that the time was very well spent.
Absolutely. And it's very inspiring, to know when you have certain deficits, but how to work around that. And I think what you're saying is about having a plan. I think that's where a lot of us parents maybe fall short in that we don't have that strategic plan starting from freshman year. And they just kind of let their student kind of go through, and then they start thinking about college, maybe in 11th grade, getting serious. And really, it really needs to start freshman year.
Well, the sooner you start, the better. And I always say, again, you're not behind, you are where you are. So getting started, if today you're getting started, then that's better than not getting started at all. So don't feel like if you didn't start freshman year, you're already late to the party and forget it, you might as well not try. Because that's not true either. And you can I mean, there's a lot of service hours that can happen over the summer, over spring break, over winter break. I mean, there's a lot of different service hours, and a lot of these kids that are online now, they may have more time depending on how the education is working. I mean, they may have some hours, and then on the high school level, there are some co-op programs and other things like that where they may be able to do some of their volunteer service hours in the afternoon or the morning. There's some different programs out there like that where they can get some of their service hours in there that way as well.
So, when you speak about service hours, how are these service hours actually documented from all these various places that you may be volunteering?
So we had a log. I'm sure there's logs that you can download. We created
Oh,
one.
okay,
We created one, and we just kept up with the hours, and we had them sign off on it.
okay.
So, they can sign off every time you volunteer. Sometimes we did it monthly for places that we were volunteering a lot. They would just do it monthly.
Okay.
But it's something that you keep up with. And if you start at the beginning, you've got this one log that you're logging everything in there, then it's a lot easier than trying
Oh,
to
monthly.
recreate it over 4 years, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I know.
Now, one thing that I will say that was kind of fun, through the 4-H program, there's a veterinary science assistant program, and there's some homework and stuff that you have to do, but it requires a lot of volunteer service work with local vets, and there are local vets. And we volunteered in Fort Bend, but there are local vets that are connected to this program, this 4-H veterinary science program. It was actually written by, I think his last name's Ferris, out of A&M. Okay, so we got a lot of Aggie graduates that went through the vet science program at A&M, and they're supporting this, and so you can get volunteer service hours. And for our kids with disabilities, a lot of our kids really like that. So my kids volunteered at a vet and it wasn't, okay, we're going to let you clean the cages or clean up after everything. It wasn't like that. They got to watch surgeries. They got to be in there in the exam room with the doctor as they were doing exams. They got to work in the grooming shop. And yes, they cleaned up some, but it wasn't like you're here to clean. It wasn't like that at all. They were really exposed. This was a big vet, and they were really exposed to a lot of different things. And so that was really, it was a hands-on experience. It was fun. It taught my kids that they don't want to be vets.
Yeah.
And it was fine. And it was fine. And they complete the veterinary science program. My theory was that, you complete the veterinary science program, that's fine. Maybe you can be a vet assistant or a vet tech when you're going to college or in between times, as opposed to maybe working at a restaurant. Maybe you could work in a vet's office. And they went through the whole thing and they enjoyed it, and it was fun while it lasted. But they also learned, which this was a learning experience, that this is not what we want to do. We don't like this. And so a lot of kids want to be a vet. And so when you start getting exposed to stuff like that, so some of your volunteerism, my point is, could be geared towards something that your child is very much interested in. And that makes it less work and more fun, and it gives them exposure, and it helps us start checking things off the list of what we don't want to do, because sometimes we think we want things that we don't.
Exactly. So it's like twofold. Volunteering is definitely going to help you with scholarships, but it's also going to expose you to situations where, yeah, this is definitely not for me. I do not want to pursue this as a goal for work. And it just really gives them that real life experience instead of just being in the classroom all the time.
For
What
sure.
does it take to go there and show up and be on time and give it your all and put your best foot forward and all of that. So, I think there's value in that, obviously, not just to log your hours, but it just seems like such a fantastic benefit all around.
For sure.
Um, so, one other question: do you have any materials in Spanish?
No. However,
Okay.
uh, one of my assistants has figured out how our YouTube channel, there's something that you can do with our YouTube channel that evidently converts our webinars to Spanish. And so if you'll just email us, we can get you that information. So it's it can be converted, and
Okay.
we definitely know how, and I can, I have them send that to you.
So it would be the YouTube channel.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Um, well, I don't see questions, um, but I think that covered a whole lot. I'm sure some of our participants are like, "Wow, I've got homework to do," for sure. But I think you've covered a lot. We've appreciated it. I don't personally have any more questions. I don't know if anyone else has any questions. I don't see any questions, but so you will be able to share this recording and this PowerPoint with us, correct?
For sure, for sure.
Okay.
And if you guys have additional questions or one-off situations that you'd like to chat with me about, feel free to reach out. We're happy to chat with you. It gives me great pleasure to share the information that we've learned along the way. Like I said, I live this professionally and personally, and
Mhm.
so we've definitely learned a lot along the way. And it really, I want to help you with this, because I will say that this process was unnecessarily difficult, as far as, researching the colleges and figuring out which offices of disabilities were good, and what are the scholarships. I mean, it is a tremendous process because, like I said, it's not uniform. Every single application is different. Every single school is different. All the deadlines are different. Like, it couldn't be any more difficult than what it is, and it's very unnecessary. So anything I can do to help you make that a little bit easier, I'm certainly happy to do that. So thanks so much for being here today. Thanks for having us, Barbara, and we look forward to working with you guys in the future, and we'll get this recording out to you.
Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Take care.